From predicted break-ins to unprovoked attacks, we take a look at 7 terrifying unsolved Halloween mysteries. Interested? Come with me. Hey guys, we are from the channel, Another Curiosity. And now with the 7 terrible unsolved mysteries of Halloween. Johnny Frank Garrett. On Halloween 1981, in Texas, an elderly nun was raped and murdered. The city of Amarillo was so scared that the cops found a scapegoat to take responsibility. Their scapegoat was Johnny Frank Garrett. Suffering from a mild intellectual disability, he was 17 at the time of the murder and lived across the street from the convent. The poor quality of the investigation knows no bounds. The police claimed that Johnny confessed, despite the fact that the tape recorder was conveniently turned off during that part of the interview. Vital evidence was thrown away. None of the hair found at the crime scene was Johnny's. They found fingerprints in the convent that matched, but everyone knew that he frequented the convent regularly. He helped the nuns from time to time. Despite all of that, Garrett was found guilty and executed in '92. If this guy had a better lawyer, or we all had Netflix 25 years ago, he could have been found not guilty. So who the hell actually raped and murdered a 76-year-old nun? Well, that's a case for another documentary. Making a Murderer Ate Your Heart Out. Christy Lynn Vorak. 13-year-old Christy Lynn Vorak disappeared on Halloween 1982. She was living in a foster home in Tacoma, Washington, and that's where she was last seen. It wasn't unusual for her to stroll around the neighborhood, but a 30-year-old stroll is probably pushing it. While her mother claims that Christy is probably alive and well, most people consider this a crazy theory considering how much time has passed since she disappeared. In 1993, Christy's name was added to a list of likely victims of Green River serial killer Gary Ridgway. Ridgway was active in the area where she disappeared in the early '80s and was targeting runaways and prostitutes, but since Christy wasn't either, there are plenty of people who dispute that conclusion. Disappearance of Chelsea Bruck. In 2014, Chelsea Bruck was seen leaving a Halloween party in Michigan. But the party wasn't a nerd get-together, it was one of those end-of-year parties with over 700 attendees. The size of the party made Chelsea's disappearance that much harder to solve. In a crowd this size, comings and goings occur without much fanfare. These details, however, would be imperative, but Chelsea was seen leaving with a man the police were never able to identify. 6 months after her disappearance, Chelsea's costume was found in an abandoned industrial site. 3 weeks later, all hopes of finding Chelsea alive were dashed. Her remains were found on a country estate about 10 miles from where Chelsea was last seen. Over a year later, the police have made no headway in solving her murder. Tony Bagley. A family outing on Halloween ended in tragedy when they were shot. In 1994, in Las Vegas, 7-year-old Tony Bagley's mother and aunt were taking the kids trick-or-treating. As they walked to the next house, a hooded figure ran up to the family and opened fire on them, before fleeing in a waiting car. Tony was shot in the head. Tony's mother was shot in the chest, his aunt in the leg, and his older sister hit in the abdomen. Police investigated whether the senseless crime was in any way related to area gangs or whether the Bagleys had a family member involved in illegal activities. More than 20 years later, no new information has emerged about Tony's tragic death, and the police are nowhere near understanding the motive for the crime or finding the killer. Chaim Weiss. On November 1, 1986, police were called to an Orthodox Jewish school on Long Island. Chaim Weiss' body was discovered in his dorm, a 16-year-old student whose spine was severed in his sleep. Detectives believe the killer was familiar with Orthodox Judaism because several of its customs were observed. The window was slightly open, which in Judaism is allowing the soul of the deceased to exit. A rabbi at the school was allowed to leave a candle burning in Chaim's room before it was closed for further investigation. When the police returned to the crime scene, another candle had been placed in Chaim's room. Detectives polygraphed 40 students and most of the school's staff. Detectives were unable to find any suspects or motive for the murder and Kostel a mystery 30 years later. Veronica Safransky. In 1996, dressing up as Pocahontas for Halloween was pretty much the ultimate costume, even for white girls. And Veronica Safransky certainly got someone's attention because she was seen leaving a bar in Minnesota with a man named Kevin Skjerven. Veronica was never seen or heard from again. Part of her costume was found on a road about half a mile from the pub, but after an extensive search the police were unable to find any further evidence. As it turns out, Kevin has a mile-long criminal record, all for sexual assault. He admits to going out with Veronica, but insists he doesn't know what happened to her after that. With no evidence to speak of, Kevin hasn't been charged, but he certainly looks bleak as fuck. Friends of Veronica said the police department did a shoddy job of the investigation and that, as a result, there may never be closure for her loved ones. Ronald Sisman and Elizabeth Platzman. In the early morning hours of Halloween, if you liked it, don't forget to leave your like and activate the notification bell to stay on top of all the news. I'm waiting for you in the next video.